Hi, I'm Doug White, and I'm not here this week, but you are. So when the world was young, Russ Boscheman and I had a traveling vaudeville show called Dr. Chowdown's Medicine Show. It was actually called Secure Digital Life. Paul made me do that. But while we're off for the holidays, I thought I would trot out another old show for you to check out. This one was from May of 2018, and Russ and I talked about how to prepare for tech interviews, which is still relevant today. So check it out and enjoy.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So, Top can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man. Oof.
In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Be like you're looking out through the HAL dot, like,
oh,
hey, Dave.
It's like Sims, but with,
It would be like Sims.
Instead of AI, it's only.
When we first started seeing bad bots, when I was a kid, there was all these shows that scared me, and I actually saw some of these things real time because like Lost in Space was scary. Space 1999 was my favorite sci-fi show that you really can't hardly find anywhere. I saw a copy of like a DVD pirate version of like $400. It was like, okay, it wasn't that good. That was a Canadian show that was actually good. And then of course there was Doctor Who.
Lost in Space.
I said Lost in Space, Star Trek, all those were on. I didn't think Star Trek was scary, but I was a little older when I was watching that. But Doctor Who was on. We got it on PBS when I was a kid.
Yeah. You hadn't seen the Borg until Next Generation.
I was late, I was growing up when we... Yeah, the Borg are scary. The Borg are scary, But Daleks were always the thing that I thought were the scariest robots around. But those were sort of the original bad boy bots and botnets of groupthink, and the Borg are a good example of bots as well. But there was always, bots always had a kind of bad thing in sci-fi. There was very little in the sci-fi in the 30s and the 40s and all that kind of stuff. Everybody was really fascinated with robots, and then Asimov sat down and he wrote he wrote iRobot, and he wrote the 3 rules of robotics and all this stuff, and he tried to sort of humanize like AI sorts of autonomous robots, and that was sort of the first person I read that was writing not about these evil Robbie the Robot kind of things coming down to take over the earth, but rather there was like, fitting into our society. Cylons. Oof. One of the most awful, stupid, cheesy shows that ever existed in the 70s was Battlestar Galactica, and they remade it as like an edgier modern show.
That was pretty cool.
I like the modern one. The old one was terrible. Yeah. It was just stupid. Yeah. But the modern one was really, really cool, and they had Cylons, which were the autonomous bots and so forth. But everybody always talked about robots being a bad thing. The term robot itself is Czech. I looked it up because I was wondering and they were talking about them in the 1940s even, and the first robot that I knew about or I ever heard about that was being used was called Unimate, which was GM was using a robotic device that just picked up a big sheet of metal and moved it to the other side.
Was that the one designed by NASA? Because NASA was using the single-arm robots to do...
I don't think so. I think GM had it built by somebody else. It was built for GM, so it might have come out of Bell Lab. I'm just totally guessing. I have no idea where that thing came from. But robots always had this kind of scaling idea from the simplest things, which was just this like Unimate arm that just...
Yeah, I pick things up, I put them down.
That's a robot. I mean, it does a job, and it does it over and over and over again. Today we have all kinds of bots, like Roombas, which are mostly used for hauling cats around, apparently.
Not cleaning.
From what? Yeah, I mean, I had a Roomba. It was terrible at cleaning, but my cats sure liked it a lot, and it was like their favorite time of the day. The Roomba would start up, and you'd hear all the cats jump up and run downstairs so they could go after it, which kept it from doing much of anything. But we have that. We also then today started having bots with the internet. And so really what I guess got me involved in this was thinking about the elections. And we're not a political show, so I don't want to talk about who did what to whom or why. But But the idea that bots got involved in elections, that people were using bots for all sorts of stuff, started to, I think, be kind of worrisome and start to sort of tend back into the Dalek world of exterminate kind of situations, which is a little scary. So I thought we would talk about a little bit and how that could focus more on the web bots than any other kind of bots that were out there. My focus was really on where did bots in terms of the internet come from and how do they actually work, because they're not really that sophisticated. They seem sophisticated, but they're not really that sophisticated at all. So the original bot, or do you want to talk about the original web bots?
As they relate to spiders?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, when HTML first started being used for web page design and web page programming, you have to have different tags. It's a tagged language. So the tags, in order to raise your but in order to raise your display within a search engine, not Google then, but it was, other ones that were around, the Butler one, Ask Jeeves and so on. You used to have to put, going back. They used to have to use these tag things, and under meta, and under those tags, meta tags they were called, you could put, at the time, 1 or 2 words, which would indicate what type of site your web page was or your website was. So if I was designing a site for, let's say, beaches in Rhode Island, I might put beaches, Rhode Island, or something along those lines. And then so people, started thinking, well, what if I want to suggestive sell my website to other people who were looking for things that were seemingly unrelated, but who knows, maybe they were looking for beaches in Rhode Island or whatever, land in Rhode Island or something. So then people started wising up to putting other tags in their website that had seemingly nothing to do with what the content was. So these bots, which were called spiders, internet spiders, would go out and they would crawl out over the internet. Web spiders, kind of funny. And they would crawl out and they would look for these meta tags and they would harvest them and stick them in a database, or something else, but just say database. And then they would assemble all these, and then so now they knew that XYZ.com had beaches, Rhode Island, and I don't know.
Well, I have the heat lamp experiment. The heat lamp experiment was something very early. So this was in like maybe 98. We had a website. This was at a university, and I had at my house. I had a basket, and I put a desk lamp over the basket, and it lured my cat into the basket. So Mr. Cat, that was the cat's name. Mr. Cat would get in the basket and sleep. So we took a camera, and this wasn't a streaming camera. It was a still snap camera, and we put that on the basket, and we were capturing snaps, and we put meta tags on it. Hi, Alan. We put meta tags on it, and Alan taught me what those were, and it was called the heat lamp cam or something like that, and we put it out, and we waited for the spiders to come and get it, and they did, and so the spiders came and got the meta tags, and after like a week, we had like 3 hits, all of which were probably me and Alan. And then I changed the meta tags, and I changed them to Hot Kitty, and that wasn't what it was called, but we'll leave it at that, and we got shut down by the ethics board, but even in these early days of the internet, when there was not that many people using the internet then, we got a massive number of hits, and we went way up on the search pages because we had this suggestive thing in the title, and we all had all these viewers and stuff. It was really strange how that happened, and that was all because of bots that were going out and they were scraping the meta tags at the time.
Yep, and harvesting them and putting them in this file or in this massive database or whatever it was. And in fact, there were other services, because I was doing web page design back in the mid 90s-ish, and one of the services that you could use as a web designer was this thing called adme.com. And what adme did was it cataloged your URL for your web page, and you were able to add additional meta tags that you couldn't put. I think at one point there were 15 was the max that you could put in HTML. I don't know if that was HTML2 or whatever, but maybe it was 1.5. But in this adme site, you could put your URL, your additional meta information, and then this adme site would distribute all that information to the databases for you. You didn't even need spiders. This thing did it for you. So it was like seeding, these different search
the opposite
engines.
of scraping.
Yeah, Yahoo.
Pushing.
Pushing, right. Yahoo, Ask Jeeves, maybe Google at one point, and things of that nature. So.
Right. And so as that stuff started maturing, then what happened was spiders started really scraping. Mm-hmm. So people realized that they could get more information than just meta tag information off a page, because the whole page was there. So if a spider could find a link, so you could literally just write a bot that says, find something that starts http:// grab the rest of the link, put that in your browser, and then switch to that link. And so the spider can now jump from page to page to page to page to page. So if you found a page of links, the spider could slowly go through every single link on the page, follow the whole tree down till it ran out of links, and then come back up. And what happened was they started looking for things like personal information, because if they could collect this, it's valuable. So marketing people love to be able to get your home address so they can send you marketing materials. And this is called a mailing list. Way back when, people bought these mailing lists, and we used to buy them for like scientific research, because we were going to send out a study, and you could contact the company and say, I need 10,000 names of people between 18 and 45 who have life insurance, because you want to ask them a question about something. And we would do these for companies, and so we would buy these mailing lists. And of course, these spiders were now building giant mailing lists, because at the time, in say like between 97 and 2007, people were really prone to slapping their resumes, their family. Oh, yeah. We did some research on this too, and we were looking at, you'd get people's family, their kids' names, their home address, their phone numbers, their driver's license number, because people used to, and this is stupid, but they used to do it on their resumes. Used to get resumes from people, and they would have their name, their home address, their phone number, oftentimes their social security number on the page, sometimes their driver's license, because a lot of jobs that we interviewed people for required security background checks, and people wanted to go ahead and give you that information right up front just so you had it in a file, and that became a problem. The other one that I saw so much of in the early part of this millennium was doctors and dentists and other vets and all these people, because those guys use paper forms. Go back even just 20 years, and if you went to the doctor's office, you wrote your name on a sheet of paper and you put your social security number beside it so they could look up your chart, which was stored by social security number, and the doctor's office kept all those records. When they switched to using electronics, they were building basic web forms that were just HTML unencrypted, and they were having people type information into I remember the first time I went to the doctor's office, this big long form, you had to type it on a computer screen, and you put all your information there, social security number, home address, home phone number, contact, spouse's name, kids' names, all this other information. And when they put that on the internet, guess what? It was all just sitting out there, and spiders and hackers started going out and developing bots to grab all that information, because, wow, talk about valuable. And this is all good stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't even talk about bad things you could do with this. This was all like on the good side of the column.
And several years ago, you saw a response to that, and that was where people were changing the format of their email address, the most basic digital piece of information that can be harvested and used for marketing purposes. And what they were doing was, instead of putting, contact me at john@yahoo.com, what they were doing was put John, and then in parentheses, they would put, AT, close parentheses, and then, XYZ, and then in parentheses dot, and then com. So the spiders were looking for a specific format, wildcard dot, at dot wildcard dot wildcard, and now this sort of fooled the bots, at least temporarily. I don't know, I'm sure they're better now.
I mean, this is all these ways of trying to obfuscate things don't really work, because a bot works 24/7. I mean, it lifts that iron plate and it moves over the other side forever, and it doesn't stop for breaks, and it doesn't stop for the sun going down. It just keeps going. And the bots on the internet basically are just pieces of code. So, I mean, if you wanted to write a bot, and I did some oversimplifications on the show notes if you look at them, but I mean, if you want to write a bot that searches for the word name and the word address, that is a really simple piece of code. I mean, you could write that in almost any language, and if you know anything about programming, you could write something that says, if this, then that. Grab the next string, grab a 32-byte string after that, and you probably got the name. you can put that in your database and go through and parse it later with another piece of code. But the bot can do that. So you say, oh, we're going to obfuscate this. So we're not going to use name anymore. We're going to put N with a colon after it. That's just another piece of code on your bot. So your bot just gets smarter. You had to do that. The bot's not autonomous. It's not evolving. We hope that we haven't started. There may be stuff like that now. But I mean, if it's just looking for that, and there's so many other ways as a programmer you can categorize information like that to search, because I've written a lot of parsing stuff because I did a lot of data conversions between old stuff and new stuff, and a lot of times you had to parse things and try to figure it out, and you can start finding rules for it. It's like, well, names often start with the capital letters, so if there's two words that are capitalized with a space between them, that might be a name. And if you get a bunch of bad stuff in there, so what? You can parse that back out and go through and put a list of every known name in the English language and say, okay, well, yeah, this actually says City Providence or something. And you go, okay, well, we'll get rid of those. And you can clean that data up. Yep. And all that really gets scary. Looking for phone numbers, that's so easy because you can look for phone numbers on websites because they're all in the same format. And it's really tough to obfuscate that without making a mess of it, although you can, but it gets harder. And we saw web pages like you were saying, where if you look at the HTML source, there's all this weird formatting stuff around a phone number, but it's like still, there's only so many area codes. So I can actually make my bot just search for all the known area codes of the United States. Credit cards. People were putting their credit card numbers on web forms. I kid you not. It was very common. People were buying stuff. It's straight up HTTP. They're putting credit card numbers on their own personal stuff, just faxes, you name it. All that stuff was going through unencrypted. And that meant that all of a sudden when people started thinking about mal, the mal side of all this, that's where bots really started to evolve into a menace. So that's where the Dalek thing starts in terms of the internet, because now it's not just advertisers saying, let's collect this. If we see 4388, they probably have a Visa card. And now it's people going, wow, I could use that credit card number and his name and buy stuff illegally and have it shipped to me in Italy. And
also, I mean, if you think about it, all these accounts, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, 16 digits. The first 4 digits identify what type of card it is. The second 4 digits identify maybe what bank it's from. And then all they have to do is take some of that information and coupled with whatever else they find on your website in a record form. And then guess what? They can call up whatever bank and start social engineering. They've got your name. They've probably got your family history. They've got your mother's maiden name, your father's maiden, or not maiden, but middle name. That's another big one.
You get that too.
And you can just social engineer the hell out of
I never use my mother's maiden name. I have a completely made-up name that I use for my mother's.
But at the time, there was no other option.
And we all used to do it because that was a very common pin. Was they would, I remember my bank used my mother's maiden name. Like, wow, like all you'd have to get my mother's maiden name is call her. Hey, what was your maiden name? And she's gonna, and it's like, I'm sorry, but that kind of scraping's been going on since the dawn of time, and I never tried to use it. In fact, I remember the first time I got asked for my mother's maiden name, I didn't want to use it. I was like, why would I use that? And I gave them this fake word. And they wouldn't take it. The bank was like, well, we can't use it. You have to have a legitimate name, like, because the guy knew what her name was. And I was like, yeah, but if you know it, that means you could get into my account. He's like, yes, I'm an officer of the bank, son.
Yeah,
like, I would never do such a thing.
That's never happened before.
My word is my bond. And I was like, didn't you guys have a big embezzlement thing just like last year? And like 3 people went to jail and all this. And he was like, oh, those people were terminated. And I'm like, oh yeah, this could never happen. But then scraping became a big business. So scraping today has evolved into something far, far more complex and sinister than what these things we're talking about are. I mean, some of these were just very low-end kind of cons and useful things as well. But today, scraping has turned into a very sophisticated industry, as we saw from and again, there's no politics here, so I'm not saying you should have voted for, you shouldn't have voted for. But in the last election, there's a lot of controversy around Cambridge Analytica, about other companies like that were essentially scraping, legally or not legally. I mean, they were actually legally scraping, and Facebook was scraping, and Twitter was scraping, and then other malevolent people, whether they're malevolent or not, I don't know, but other just people that were doing it illegally were also writing bots that were scraping that. Today, there is something called robots.txt, which is a file that you can hide on in your tree for your web structure. Good luck with that. If you want to look, I put the link to it. Robotstext.org has examples of what robot.txt do. And this is a file that is a text file. It's a very hackable file, and a lot of people went after it early. Basically, it's some rules for good bots, and it says basically only look at the following things. Don't look at these things. So if it's a good bot and it's following the rules, good luck with that. And you say only look at the folder called /photos.
Yeah.
It would only look at the folder that says /photos, whereas a bad bot simply ignores robots.txt and just goes rolling right along. And my impression of that when I first started seeing this stuff was it was like a no spitting sign. You know, there's a sign there that says don't spit.
But you can.
But you can stand beside the sign and spit.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe if you get caught, somebody says, there was a no spitting sign, so don't tell me you didn't know you were supposed to be not spitting. But it didn't really keep anybody from actually spitting. And so bad bots just ignore the robots.txt file and move right on ahead and scrape the whole page. So don't start thinking that a robots.txt file is any kind of a protection or a solution to all this stuff, right?
I agree. Geez, yeah. I like to spit a lot too, you know.
Well,
so.
But there's a lot of solutions out there if you're looking at this kind of stuff for your personal needs or whatever. There's sites that just basically do blacklisting of known bot sites. So if those bots are hitting your site, they're blocked. So they look at them. My experience with that was it doesn't work very well because the bad bots, the good bot people, sure, it works fine. But it's kind of like robocalls. They can make a do not call list. They can say they're going to prosecute people who do this, but prosecuting people outside of your sovereignty, wherever that is very difficult. Getting a robocall when you're on the do not call list from another area code, another country, another whatever. Of course, you can change your number every 5 minutes. That's what the bots were doing too. So they just change IP addresses constantly, just like scanners do, and it doesn't really help. They have traps for bots now, so they have people that build traps to try to lure them in so they can tell that they're bots and then blacklist them before they get. It's a honeypotting kind of approach. CAPTCHA is another way so that the page doesn't actually load any information until you complete the CAPTCHA window. Again, as you've seen, those CAPTCHA things get really, really crazy.
Yeah, if there are 3 freaking signs in the pictures, there are 3 signs. You know, so clarify that on the capture, please. That's just my argument.
I hate those things.
CAPTCHA.
It's like I never get them right.
How many street signs?
Yeah, and I'm like, well, how do you define a street sign?
Is it a
There's
part
a sign
of one?
there that says cafe. Is that a street sign or not? And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what the rules are for this stupid thing. And people keep getting around it, obviously, because initially it was just like type these 3 numbers.
Type these 3 letters.
Then all of a sudden it was
anyway.
like type these really swirly letters that you can't read anyway. Oh, well, now we got to pick pictures out. And pretty soon it's going to be like solve this advanced mathematical equation, which the robot will do faster than you can anyway, and to prove that you're not a bot. So then maybe do something stupid like pound this Bud Light while cheering for a football team to prove you're not a robot, because the robot will be going like, that's a dumb thing to do. But get in a fist fight with your best friend and half kill each other over who scored that goal, kind of thing. But using these anti-bot IP filters is something people are doing. Blacklist, whitelist, on and on, encrypting the site, CAPTCHAs, and on and on and on. But now we're seeing bots really start getting serious about scraping. And so coming all the way back around to the election, these things are called Chatterbots. And so this was actually sort of a different thing that was based in scraping, but now is actually proactive. So it's not just about collecting information. But what they were doing was using Chatterbots on Facebook, on all these other sites, and they were actually profiling people based on things they liked, things they typed, things that they wrote or whatever on Facebook or in Instagram and all these other sites. So they were actually Instagram's just pictures, but although you could do it with that too, because I saw an AI that was like looking at pictures of me and drawing like interpretations of it. And I'm like, okay, so the AI is pretty smart.
While tripping on acid.
Well, yeah, those were pretty cool pictures.
Not you, the robot.
Well, no, I know, but me too. I was like, wow, dude. And the robot was like, wow, dude, we're all fried. But, I mean, these Chatterbots were not now just collecting information about you. They were using that information to profile you into groups. And not just that. So it got even worse because then statisticians got involved.
People.
No, statisticians aren't people. Okay. Don't make that mistake. statisticians, which are sometimes confused with humans.
We've secretly replaced your human with a statistician.
A statistician, an actuarial. Because I mean, nobody's more. I mean, you almost have. I mean, I'm a statistician, so. But you almost have to be a sociopath to be like an actuarial, because you're just sitting there going, you're computing what will kill you, and you're just like, well, your child may die from the. I mean, I've been in these meetings where they're going, well, a child could die from using this product in 1% of the cases, and we figure that the payout on the lawsuits from the 1% would actually not exceed the value of the 99% of the products we will sell that will not kill children. And I'm like, how many of those are maimed? And they're like, oh, that would only be up to 5%, but the payout's much lower on a maiming. And you're just like, wait, what did you just say? And I mean,
that was like that girl, Astrid in Fringe. Remember that show?
Oh, yeah,
Fringe?
Absolutely.
Well, on the alternate side,
yeah.
she was like a there's a 99% chance that this is going to happen. Do it. So.
Absolutely. And so, but when statisticians got involved in this, it turns into what's called big data.
Yeah.
And big data is a thing. And it's a very valuable and important thing where people use massive volumes of information to try and profile behaviors. And in this case of Cambridge Analytica, to then modify your behavior based on the profile that was developed by their bots, which were scraping your behavior on Facebook. So they were saying, okay, here's a person who likes Doctor Who. Here's a person who likes Star Trek. Here's a person who then posted a bunch of, and I'm just making up candidates because I don't want to get into politics. So they posted a bunch of Buck Turgidson stuff. You know who Buck Turgidson is?
No.
He was the general in Dr. Strangelove. George C. Scott his name was Buck Turgidson.
Oh.
And if Buck Turgidson's whole spiel is that he's going to shove 70,000 megatons of kaboom boom right up the floating head's ass. And that's that. Now I'm crossing crossing my references from Dr. Strangelove to Rick and Morty, but that's okay. If that's his platform, and they figure out that people who like Star Trek and like Doctor Who and like Dr. Strangelove and like Rick and Morty could maybe be brought on board Buck Turgidson's team by simply posting chats back at them and links back at them that get you to Buck Turgidson's site. And and remember, these politicians were now building custom sites for different groups of people. Yep. So they were directing you to this set of stuff because they said, oh, this person is a different market segment. So the person who was all along going, I want to sell 70,000 megatons, that person, they were like, okay, we put them on the crazy side over here. But these other people are kind of on the fence about this. They like all this sci-fi stuff, but they weren't too keen on the shoving the 70,000 megatons. And we got to get them on board with Buck. So they maybe have a different message planned over there, and then add to it Chatterbots. Mm-hmm. So the original Chatterbot, you know what the original Chatterbot was?
I mean, I just know Chatbots. So tell me what the original Chatterbot was.
Eliza. So long ago in the 60s, MIT developed this computer program called Eliza. Eliza had multiple instantiations that did different things, and the basic Eliza was an early attempt to go at the Turing test. So
can you convince
the Turing test, if you don't know, and you probably do, but I'll tell you anyway. The Turing test was just an attempt that if a judge or a panel of judges could not tell a human from a computer program, that was essentially considered passing a Turing test. Mm-hmm. It's kind of naive. I mean, not to insult Alan Turing, because it is in his time, I completely agree, but modern, that's a little trickier. Yeah. But Eliza just took things that you said to her, so you typed it. I used to have a copy of it somewhere. You typed things to her, and she would respond with other phrases. A lot like you see from Sylvia and Alicia, our two friends that we have sitting on our tables everywhere and on our phones, do the very same things. If you say, Alicia, tell me you love me, and it'll give you some snarky comment. And Eliza was very similar to that. And then they added to Eliza, there was a routine they added to it called Doctor. And the Eliza Doctor used the principles of psychotherapy to deal with you. Wow. So and it was really fun, and a lot of people did it. I had it on the mainframe. I set it up. I had it running for people, and it got used all the time. And it was really fun to watch the stuff people type to Eliza, which were things like, Eliza, what if I think I'm an axe murderer? And Eliza would take these terms, embed them in the database, and then respond to you with certain preset phrases. Chatterbots do the very same thing. They look at things you're typing, and they echo those things back to you now with maybe a little bigger of a message. And again, this is a sophisticated program, but it's not that sophisticated. It's not artificially intelligent. It's just taking a database of phrases that some marketing person came up with or some psych person came up with. They're looking for you to say something like, I really hate those floating heads. I really hate those guys. But maybe you were already categorized as a not crazy. So they don't want to just take you straight to the, death and mayhem page. They want to put you on a kind of soft touch page for Buck Turgidson where Buck is tough on floating heads. That's a different message than, let's nuke those guys, nuke them right now till they glow, and then salt the earth so nothing will ever grow again. That's the crazy side. And on the other side, you've got, Buck Turgidson, tough on floating heads. I think so. I mean, and if they can do that, and then they can chat back with you. So the Chatterbots expanded again, and they actually became what you hear them talk about. They call them trolls. I mean, and trolls are real people too, but, well, not really. Trolls are awful regardless, but, I mean, trolls are scum of the earth, but whether they're human or not. Yeah. But these bots became troll bots. And they were able to use these Eliza-like models to just throw stuff to you, to feed you the line right at the right time. So you're on there ranting about floating heads, and maybe this troll bot jumps on your Twitter feed and says, I hate floating heads too, dude. Floating heads suck. and you go, wow, man, you and I agree. You think just like me, dude.
Who are you voting for?
Right. And then, yes, man, have you ever heard of Buck Turgidson? He's a guy that could really take care of business. And, that other candidate, well, she is the scum of the earth. I heard she worships Satan by the light of the moon. I heard she drinks baby's blood. And, and maybe you buy it, maybe you don't. But the whole idea was that we can take this giant collection of scraped data we have about you, because Facebook was a lot more than just a resume on a page. Mm-hmm. Facebook made you into a thing, like an object that had all these attributes that we could look at, and Facebook was looking at them. They were selling their research. They were selling raw data. And when somebody like Cambridge Analytica takes a room full of actuarials and statisticians, and they all sit around going, could we manipulate this person? I do believe we could, Bob. How would we manipulate them? Well, it would be much easier if we gave them a direct shot of phenol straight into their cerebral cortex. Then they would just be brain dead, and they would do exactly what we wanted, slaves of us forever. And yes, but that would be illegal, Bob. Well, I tell you what, maybe we should do it some other way. And they started working on the psych piece, and they started figuring out what buzzwords, what words hit you. How do I get my chatbot to use the word abortion over and over and over again? I'm not going to politicize it. I'm just going to say it's a word. It's a trigger word for a lot of people in many different directions. Right, good, bad, I don't care. But I mean, you throw that word in that conversation at the right time, you maybe get that person worked up, and then you get them, Buck Turgidson, floating heads? I don't think so. And they maybe just lead you right down this nice little path to a different place. And whether that's right or wrong, I have no idea. It is a scary Dalek kind of thing. It sounds like something the Daleks might actually do. Now, on the good side, I actually like targeted marketing. Mm-hmm. I would much rather see an ad about, benevolent floating heads if I'm interested in such a thing. The example I used in the show notes was trapezoidal dancing. If I'm interested in trapezoidal dancing, it's like square dancing, but it's a lot better. Maybe, I want to see that ad. I want to see trapezoidal dancing supplies on Amazon instead of seeing ads for circular dancing, which is just confusing.
But they're still not perfect. Like, for instance, the other day I was looking up a price comparison of pull-ups. Which, like, diapers for 3-year-olds, because I have a 3-year-old
and then he's going to Vegas.
And they shut up. and they're really expensive in the store. So I was trying to see if I could get a discount online by shopping Amazon or something. And now every time I go to all my websites, the stupid ads are for 3-year-old pull-ups. It just aggravates me. I can't get rid of it.
Well, yeah, and so like my wife and daughter share my Amazon because I have Prime and we don't pay for 3 Prime accounts. Yeah, so every time my wife goes in there and buys the Hank Williams Country Music Collection for one of her family members, I'm like, for the next 6 days, all I get is all these like old style country music, and I'm like, I don't want this. Please make it stop.
You're cheating hard.
Well, then I go in there and search for a bunch of weird stuff to get it back on track again. It's like, because they sell everything on Amazon now. And
what's she going to use with a marital aid?
Well, I did learn how to clear my browser history because my friend and I were asking questions about what do they sell on Amazon, and we accidentally typed in some stuff we shouldn't have, and then I was getting some really interesting ads. But I do like targeted marketing to some degree because, if I'm interested in trapezoidal dancing, I may be interested in tesseractial dancing. I mean, if you can do it in 3 dimensions, you might as well try 4.
Try 4.
But all this stuff is a bit scary. It leads to a lot of modern ethics questions about what rights do you have, the GDRP stuff now. Mm-hmm. I put some links to some novels and short stories if you want to read them that were very much about this.
You brought up adult diapers in the notes too.
The notes actually mentions adult diapers because I knew Russ was going to that adult diaper convention coming right up. And he says he searched for pull-ups, but he was really searching for sexy adult diapers.
Chap style.
Yeah, chaps. We won't talk about the parts that are missing. But regardless of all that, this is starting to lead to a sort of new era of I think security, because you see a lot of stuff about election security. And remember, when people talk about hacking the election, that's a bad misnomer. We're going to talk about it next week because I want to talk about hacking the election next time because that is an issue, and I don't like the misnomer because I'll save that for another show. But this is something you need to be thinking about. Like, how's it out there? What are they doing to me? And how are they slicing and dicing my brain and my behavior and manipulating me? So you really kind of need to start thinking about, am I being manipulated? How am I being manipulated? Maybe you want to be manipulated. I don't know. I mean, maybe you wanted to vote for Buck Turgidson, and now they put you where you need to be. I mean, that's the other side of the argument is that if Buck Turgidson says neutrinos harmless, I don't think so. We got to nuke those neutrinos and get rid of them. And that's the least crazy thing I've seen on the news today. But I mean, maybe that is your position, and now somebody really did just lead you to where you needed to be, or maybe not. I think a lot of people feel like they got clickbaited on a lot of things.
And I think that's where this schism started the schism has always been there, but I think that this is where it began to manifest itself in modern media was the difference between the truth and the alt-truth, right? Or the alternative truths was in this whole, hacking of the election, where these chatbots or these bots were coming along and they were dissuading you from voting for one candidate and persuading you to vote for another, not directly, but maybe indirectly, or maybe perhaps it was, and so you started seeing that schism of, well, this is true, but this is also true.
Well,
but it's not.
It's the ethics of, do I manipulate you with the truth? Which means I say, Buck Turgidson stands for getting rid of floating heads, right. And you say, I stand for getting rid of floating heads of voting for Buck Turgidson, or I say, Buck Turgidson really likes cats and chocolate, and to get you to vote for him and hope you don't see all the other crazy stuff that he's doing. And that's where that ethics piece starts to come into it, and it starts to turn into politics there, and so we're not going to talk about it. But I mean, the whole thing about bots and Daleks is a really important topic for the day. Next time, I do want to talk about hacking the election. I want to talk about what that means. No politics, I promise. Well, I'll try. But regardless, vote Zoidberg. Why not? I've got a shirt for that.
You do.
But anyway, so thanks, Russ, and
Doug.
Thanks all of you, and keep those cards and letters coming in, and we'll see you next time on Secure Digital Life.